The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. You're listening to WSFM LP 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina. This is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us always with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment of any of the shows, you're free to do so. Just send us an email if you do. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. This show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville, specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop. This episode will include two segments. Firstly, Burst speaks with a longtime supporter of vegan anarchist prisoner Eric King, who was accused in 2014 of attempting to firebomb a government official's office in Kansas City. They speak about his case, veganism in prison, and steps moving forward with his support, among many other topics. Also about the fast-approaching June 11th Day of Solidarity with Anarchist Prisoners, and also for the first International Day of Solidarity with Eric himself on June 28th, 2017, and the ideas and visions surrounding that. You can keep up with Eric's situation by going to supportericking.org. Secondly, I, William, speak with two members of the Liverpool-based anarchist black metal project, Dawn Raid, who have just kicked off a tour of the U.S. with one date in Asheville on June 21st at the Auditorium. We talk about anarchism and black metal, what the two have to offer each other, and about the political situation in Liverpool as it relates to music culture, and of course many other topics. You can hear all their music on Bandcamp for free. But first, here are some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We'll call like a what?
Attorneys suck. Typically, you can't really say everyone from a particular profession sucks. You can't say, for instance, that all plumbers suck. Well, not unless you want to end up someday pooping in your own bushes. But beyond that, it's kind of tough to make a case that all plumbers deserve to be painted with the same brush. It's just unfair. But that's not the case with attorneys. All attorneys suck, even the benevolent, kind, salt-of-the-earth variety. Attorneys, as a class, have destroyed our world. The United States, in particular, has more attorneys per capita than anywhere else in the world. That means that wherever you have high concentrations of humans, you're bound to have some attorneys in the crowd. They blend right in just like real humans. It's ridiculous. And even though there are more attorneys per capita in the U.S. than anywhere else, law schools just keep pumping them out, letting them run willy-nilly through the halls of power and privilege, like rotten little kids hopped up on sugar, running down the hallway with scissors in both hands. Attorneys are everywhere. They run everything. The sheer number of them is the beginning of the problem, too. They get out of law school burdened with huge debt, including college loans and bar tabs, and they need jobs. Their fellow lawyers, some of whom are senators and judges and heads of state, certainly don't want to set a trend of leaving lawyers unemployed, sleeping under bridges, trading sex for snack food. So powerful attorneys in allegiance to their craft do what they can to manufacture jobs for fellow lawyers. In fact, lawmakers can manufacture entire industries in support of all these lawyers. That's why we in the U.S. have the biggest, ugliest criminal code in the world, and it's constantly growing. That's why we have new laws cranked out daily, requiring teams and teams of legal minds to relitigate new issues ad nauseum. The pervasive rule of lawyers has now brought us to a world where every single living thing requires three of them just to function. You need a tax lawyer just in case the government comes after you, and a criminal lawyer just in case the government comes after you, and a civil lawyer in case you somehow swerve into someone else's lane of traffic while you're distracted by the government coming after you. But to add insult to injury, the lawyer class has purposely made the litigation process complicated and incomprehensible even to themselves, making it impossible to prevail without one of them. And they've made the process deliberately costly and time-consuming, totally overwhelming, so that poor folks who have suffered injustices have no real chance to win in court before they exhaust whatever meager funds they have. And that means the wealthy and powerful know they can take advantage. They know they can misbehave without consequences. And they do. Greed barons like Donald Trump rip off all the small people they owe for services and then hide behind teams of lawyers. Want paid by them? Good luck. Then, to make the situation even worse, there's a conspicuous absence of attorneys who serve the poor. Legal aid offices are few and far between, overwhelmed and understaffed. The public defender offices for criminal defendants are generally there to shove the meat into the meat grind. Lawyers who are the juridical equivalent to hot dog makers. Yes, they turn poor into hot dogs. This isn't the 1960s where you had real firebrand defenders of the important causes, speaking truth to power, taking on the cases of the Malcolm X's and the Martin Luther Kings and the Abby Hoffmans, seeking to protect important values and principles, the character and integrity of our democracy, and blah, blah, blah. These days, before even taking a case, the lawyers contemplate the cost in time and resources, anticipating the barrage of legal junk that will be thrown at them in the course of the litigation, and they know it will simply be too many watts for their speakers. There's no payout in defending the important causes, so the attorneys follow the money. Even the lawyers who dabble in slumming it in order to appease their own consciences and attempt to remain partially human, they only do half-ass work for free compared to what they would do for paying clients. Then they've done nothing to help the poor, whose cases they've half-assed, making the situation worse than if they'd done nothing at all. There's that old joke, what do you call 100 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. The reality is, 100 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean is really an excuse for state and federal criminal investigations that lead to multiple trials, plus Senate hearings to investigate crimes against attorneys, not to mention several commissions on the rule of law in the modern world, the passage of new hate crime statutes, and several conventions of lawyer groups held in spots like Las Vegas so attendees can write the expenses off on their taxes. I think I said this once, but it bears repeating. Attorneys suck. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from War and Corruption in Lebanon, Ohio. If you're listening, you are the resistance.
You can write to Sean Swain at Sean Swain 243-205, Warren CI, P.O. Box 120, 5787 State Route 63, Lebanon, Ohio 45036. Updates on his situation and more writings by Sean can be found at seanswain.org.
We're speaking with Jane, a supporter of the imprisoned anarchist Eric King, about the upcoming Day of International Solidarity for him. Thanks a lot for taking the time to talk.
Yeah, thank you.
So longtime listeners of The Final Straw may have heard about Eric's case, but for those who haven't, will you tell listeners about who Eric King is, what happened in his case, and how long does he have left in his sentence?
For sure. So Eric King is a 30-year-old vegan anarchist prisoner. He's currently serving a 10-year sentence for allegedly attempting to firebomb a government official's office after hours in Kansas City, Missouri. He's a super awesome, funny guy. He's staunchly anti-fascist, anti-racist, anti-sexist. He's a prolific poet. He's gotten super into yoga. He used to box when he was younger. He's just overall like a really amazing guy to be in touch with and do support work for. So Eric came into suspicion for this firebombing attempt, which I want to mention, both of the incendiary devices failed to ignite. But he came under suspicion because he was being suspected for some anti-government, anti-police graffiti. So they arrested him September of 2014, and he was held pretrial at CCA Leavenworth in Kansas. Then on March 3rd of 2016, he accepted a non-cooperating plea agreement. And then June 28th of last year, he was sentenced to 10 years, which is both the statutory minimum and maximum for the charge he pled guilty to. And I just want to mention for folks who are interested, the transcript of his sentencing, which of course includes his sentencing statement, is on his support site, supportericking.org, and it's definitely worth a read. It's pretty short and includes an awesome statement made to the court by a friend. And in his statement, Eric called the judge and the whole court a farce. So overall, definitely worth a read, especially if folks want to know where he's coming from. And so Eric was supposed to get out on June 2nd, 2023, but because of some drama that happened in January and these disciplinary charges he was brought up on because of his poetry and some anti-state, anti-BOP drawings and writings they found, he lost his good time and his release date was extended 23 days. So now he is slated to get out June 23rd, 2023, so he has about 6 years left.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, how's he dealt with incarceration since he's been inside? Is there anything about that drama that you want to talk about? If not, that's totally okay. But has he been able to get access to vegan food, literature, communication, and human contact while inside?
Yeah, so he's been through a lot. I mean, he's only been in since September 2014, so he's been in about 2.5 years. And he's dealt with a lot of shit since he's been in. When he was at CCA Leavenworth, things were definitely much worse. He had a horrible time with all the things you just mentioned. It was a battle to get him a vegan tray. It happened after like 6 months of people doing campaigns, people calling and advocating. And finally, this group, Support Vegans in Prison, got involved. And once they got involved, he finally got one. And there was also all this stuff happening in his unit where they were withholding all the mail from the unit. So he had issues with mail when he was there. He also was in the SHU for a lot of the time he was there, so he had very limited contact. Even when he was in general population, all of his visits were behind glass, and then if he was in the SHU, they were video visits.
For those in the listening audience that may not know the terms BOP or SHU, can you say what those are?
Sure, for sure. The SHU is Secure Housing Unit, so it's the whole segregation, and so prisoners are in the small cell for 23 hours of the day, and the BOP is the Bureau of Prisons.
Thanks.
So while he was at CCA Leavenworth and he's in segregation a lot, that means he's not getting his visits, even though visits while he was there were behind glass anyway. But they would be video visits. So his partner was telling me that she would drive 8 hours or fly there to go visit him, and it would be a 45-minute video visit. And then they got married last June, and even that was through glass. So while he was at CCA Leavenworth, things were definitely pretty rough, and he was met with a lot of BS from the prison there. But then he got transferred to Englewood last fall, and while he was there, he was able to have these long visits in a visitation room. He was able to get used books and magazines from anyone, which, as someone who supports him, was super fun because I could pick up a book at like a used bookstore that looked like something he'd be into and send it his way and not even have to think about it. But since he's been relocated to Florence, things are back to normal with restrictions on like books and magazines only coming through a bookstore or publisher type thing. But he still has visiting room visits, and now he's teaching a yoga class. So overall, things definitely seem to be more tolerable compared to when he was at Leavenworth. But it is worth mentioning he does still have to fight for vegan food. The BOP is required to provide only one fully vegan tray a day, and the other two are called quote-unquote non-flesh trays, which I find to be really, really disgusting. So they aren't fully vegan. He still has to read ingredients, and he'll often have to argue with kitchen staff and the COs, the correction officers. But he does often win, and they'll give him like some hummus or something. So that is definitely positive, but it is still a daily fight. He has to advocate every single day for himself to get food. But through this whole thing, he maintains such this wonderful energy. He's always upbeat and goofy, and I'm always just impressed with how he kind of takes this stuff in stride and is able to kind of laugh at the guards when he can and have these little victories and just overall be in good spirits whenever I speak with him.
Quick other question. Then, So he's fighting hard for the vegan food, which is awesome. Does he have access to? Also, well, first off, does it cost extra money off his commissary to get the quote unquote flesh-free or whatever, fleshless tray? And also, does he have access to supplements that he needs?
I actually do not know if it costs extra money. But definitely the canteen is essential as a vegan prisoner for him to get more food. And as far as I know, his health has been good. It was bad when he was at CCA Leavenworth and getting denied food, and he was having, he thought, some like B12 deficiency problems. But as far as I know, his health has been pretty good. I'm not sure about supplements.
Okay, that's good to hear, though.
Yeah.
So a few years back, we had someone on the show who talked about Eric's case. They shared a poem of Eric's, who, as you mentioned, is a prolific writer and poet. Is there one that you might want to share that you think speaks his voice well?
Sure, I'll read you my favorite one. Okay, this one is untitled. For some reason in my mind, thinking this would be just fine, take a few years to relax and unwind. I've never eaten well enough to fret on what's not there. Been ages since I've slept peacefully anywhere. Sadness is a cliff top, I sometimes think, and moods change as often as I blink. Just like I miss the buses burning by, I long for every star burning holes in the sky. Passion is a fleeting like a tornado. Existence is brief, but impacts everywhere that it goes. My memory is a strobe light, bouncing back and forth to rhyme, thinking maybe I won't fuck it up this time. My eyes have no reason to stay dry. They remember every goodbye. They burn with every good cry, thinking the door won't close this time.
Very cool. Very nice.
Yeah.
When was that published, in case people want to find that one on the support page?
That actually I do not believe is published. We are working on transcribing his poetry to get it out there, but they can go to supportericking.org, and there is a lot of his poetry on there, and it's updated pretty frequently.
So there's been a call for a first International Day of Solidarity with Eric King on June 28th of 2017. What's envisioned from this call-up, and what sorts of solidarity have been shown for Eric in the past?
So in creating this day, we were really hoping to cultivate and broaden a community of support for him and maintain it worldwide. And so like with the stuff I mentioned at CCA Leavenworth and him being brought up on charges this past January, we've seen him go through all these struggles even in just these past 2.5 years. So we definitely in the past have relied on the broader community of political prisoner support to help out. And we're really hoping to solidify that base, especially since he has about 6 years left. And there have been many acts of solidarity for Eric. When he was going through this stuff this past winter with preparing for this disciplinary hearing, and we had no idea when it was going to be, we had a really successful campaign of people calling in and bothering them about it and advocating for him. And that was really great. When he was at Leavenworth, so many people helped fight for the vegan tray by calling and writing and pressing the prison, which was super awesome. And then, of course, like I mentioned before, when Support Vegans in Prisons, that group got involved, that helped tremendously. And, this past winter, I'll just speak about it for a second. When he was brought up on charges, it was for poetry and stick figures depicting violence to the state and BOP officials. And people really stepped up and made a ton of calls and showed their solidarity. He ended up getting harsh sanctions. He got loss of phone, loss of visits, and loss of commissary for 60 days, and then lost 27 days of good time. But he believes that if it weren't for the people who called in and who advocated for him during that time, that he would have ended up at a CMU. So definitely those acts of solidarity have been really, really amazing.
And CMU is a communication management unit?
Yes, thank you. And we've seen, not only are these wins like the vegan tray or, him not getting sent to the communication management unit, but we've seen these acts of solidarity do wonders for him too. Like when he was first inside and not getting a vegan tray, he would kind of just suck it up and pick through what he could. But once people started advocating for him and showing solidarity and putting pressure on the prison, he felt more emboldened and confident to stick up for himself and fight for what he needed. And that's huge, and to me, an enormous win and proof that doing prisoner support work is effective for myriad reasons. And it also showed the guards that people were watching and concerned, and it seems like as overall impacted how they interact with him. So that's been really great. As far as the day itself, for folks on the outside, we're encouraging people to organize events in their cities or towns, whether it's a fundraiser or a punk show or a poetry reading, or it's just, kind of handing out his support flyers. Anything to spread awareness about him and his case and get people interested in him is really the goal.
How can folks write to Eric, and what sorts of things are appropriate to write to him? Like if folks engage in solidarity with Eric also and want to get word to him and around, where and how can they safely and responsibly share that?
Sure. So Eric is a great pen pal. He loves hearing detailed stories about what people have going on, vegan recipes, hikes you've done, trips you've taken, news from U.S. or international political prisoners, any news you've read that happens to be uplifting since things have been pretty freaking depressing, animal stories, creative projects you're working on, the stars, boxing, yoga. Like he's an amazing pen pal. But we would ask people not write explicitly anarchist or, kind of like fire to the prisons type stuff. He's definitely been under more surveillance, and he, as we've seen with these charges he was brought up on in January, he's being targeted for his anarchist views. And when they brought him up on those charges, they mentioned his support site and his poetry being anti-state and anti-government. And, he can't control what someone writes to him, so we would hate to see him get hit for something that like a well-meaning person wrote. So I would just suggest staying away from explicitly anti-state, anti-cop rhetoric, and definitely do not talk about anything illegal. But that should go for any kind of correspondence anyone is having, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever, but especially to a prisoner, because of course we know that the cops read all of the mail. And if folks are going to organize events or like make posters or whatever else for January 28th, we would love to see them and hear about it. You can send them to our collective. It's supportericking@riseup.net. And if you want to send info about an event you're hosting or putting on, then we will try and help promote it. And then, of course, if you want to write Eric directly and let him know what you're up to, you can find his address on his support site, which is supportericking.org.
Also coming up in the meantime is June 11th, which has been, since the mid-2000s, it's been a day of international solidarity with long-term eco and anarchist prisoners. First off with Jeff Free Lures, later with Eric McDavid, and now centering greatly on Marius Mason and other prisoners. Do you have anything you can share about June 11th, what it's looked like, and about this year's call-up?
Yeah, so last year was the first year that Eric participated in June 11th, and it wasn't too robust. He definitely got mail, but he was prepping for his sentencing, so he and his support crew were pretty preoccupied with that. But we're hoping this year will be a little bigger, and it already has been a bit. He's been a bit more involved, and although his International Day of Solidarity being the 28th is, in the same month as June 11th, it was with the blessing of the June 11th crew. And so we are putting a lot of our collective efforts into June 28th, but we are super grateful and so excited that Eric is a part of the June 11th call-up. I think it provides just yet another base of support for him and, for other long-term eco and anarchist prisoners. It maintains this, when you have this regular event, it maintains this specific date that you can funnel events or you can point new people to provide support or to get involved or, to reach out to these prisoners. So we're super psyched that Eric is a part of it. And I think this year will be good.
Cool. Well, Jane, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Or
yeah,
me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm not plural. My name is, but I'm not plural. Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
That was Burst's conversation with a member of the support team for vegan anarchist prisoner Eric King. And now we're going to hear an interview with the anarchist black metal band from Liverpool, Dawn Raid. You're listening to WSFM LP 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, and this is The Final Straw. I'm speaking with two members of the band Dawn Raid. Would you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what y'all do?
I'm Simon. I sing and play violin in Dawn Raid.
And I'm Fabian. I play guitar in Dawn Raid.
Yeah, we're an anarchist black metal band from Liverpool in the UK.
Would you talk a little bit about how music has influenced your politics or activism? And additionally, how did you first come into politics or anarchism?
I think we both, and Matthew's not here, we all grew up listening to punk and metal and going to shows, and the nature of the scene in Liverpool in particular meant that we had to start putting on shows ourselves if we wanted to see bands that we wanted to see, and it meant that we started putting on shows in DIY spaces, and we came into contact with some of the radical politics we get into through that. And then I think separately in the UK, when we were studying, there was a big student movement, and through that we ended up getting involved in anarchist politics and direct action and learning about that approach to the political situation. And then that the music and politics both were constantly influencing each other. So we found ourselves wanting to play in anarchist spaces, and then that would make us sort of help our politics develop. And then as our politics developed, we found music that added to that as well. So the two things both pushed each other forward.
One thing I think I found is that I definitely grew up listening to more punk than anything else, and that definitely set the scene or set the tone for what my politics were going to be for the rest of my life. I think being generally left wing, generally mistrust of the cops and the state, but I do feel it's got to a point where I'm struggling to find bands that I really like and are singing specifically about the things I want to hear about. I do feel like my politics have surpassed any sort of political music I can find at the moment, and I must say I'm left wanting a little bit with in regards to political music. So we try to make music that is as political as we would want to hear, I guess, and as specifically political as we would want to hear.
Definitely. The intersection of politics and music is so interesting. I know so many people who have gotten into politics via punk, like you were describing, and I'm interested in this sort of notion that black metal or metal in general, as opposed to there's this sort of discussion happening that punk sort of promotes this show togetherness, this very communal kind of feeling, whereas metal promotes a more sort of solitary, reflective atmosphere. And you can kind of see this in the tenor of punk shows versus metal shows, whereas punk shows, everybody's kind of moshing and sort of having a sort of communal experience, whereas in metal shows, people tend to be a little bit more self-reflective. Do you have any words on that or any opinions on that, or am I totally off base?
I think that it's a difficult one, and it totally depends on the nature of the show, how many people are there, what bands are playing from what particular genre. And I think people have lots of different sides to themselves, and there's times where they want to be more reflective, and there's times where they want to be part of a group experience, and people can go out and choose to enjoy both of those experiences. And I think there's metal shows that are as together and as thoughtful and as sort of communal as any punk shows that we've ever been to. And then again, there's punk shows that can feel like very isolating experiences as well, if they're not as politicized as they should be. So they're punk by name, but actually they might not have the politics.
I think one thing I get frustrated about sometimes and this is true of both scenes definitely, but punk shows can be, you hear a lot of sloganism sometimes, and a lot of people say sort of positive things, but they can be quite party atmospheres, and I think people pay lip service to political ideas sometimes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those spaces are actually more actively politicized. And we've definitely, I've been really pleasantly surprised playing explicitly anarchist and political black metal. The response at just straight up, seemingly apolitical metal shows has been really good. And I wouldn't I think that self-reflective side of metal can be quite cool as well. I think that can be quite important. It can be quite a somber and thoughtful affair. I think there's positives to both, but just that the rowdy sort of party atmosphere of punk doesn't necessarily make it more positive than metal. Or I think maybe each has its positives.
I think at a punk show you can very safely say like "fuck the cops" or like "smash Nazis," and you're going to get a quick cheer, and everyone knows what you mean, and it's cool. But it doesn't really necessarily. You don't necessarily get that engagement with people. Whereas at a show where maybe a lot of the bands don't talk, or people aren't expecting to hear political topics discussed, it can have quite a nice impact as well. And the people at those shows are people who probably also go to punk shows, but it's can be positive to bring those politics into spaces where they might not necessarily have been otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. Like, people get used to hearing political things at punk shows, I think. So sometimes when you can catch people a little bit off guard at metal shows, I think. And I'm the same. We went to see Napalm Death and Power Trip the other day, and every single band talked about politics during every single song, and it was like super refreshing. And I wasn't expecting it to be that much. Whereas if you just gone to see some sort of anarcho crust bands or punk bands, maybe it wouldn't have the same impact because you're just expecting it anyway. So yeah, I think it's pluses on both sides.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the statement that there's so many sides to somebody and you can't kind of like be smashy all the time makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Dawn Raid is an anarchist black metal project. Would you talk a little bit about just how it got started and maybe any previous projects y'all have been in?
Yeah, we used to be in a sort of a screamer band or sort of emo violence band called We Came Out Like Tigers, which was anarchist as well, and I thought it was quite heavy, but it wasn't as extreme as this band. That kind of got to a point where it came to a natural end. Did that band, and we decided to just start something that's straight up pure black metal, absolutely explicit in its politics. So something a bit more straight up and to the point, I think, than our last band. But it's quite interesting that the last band, because it was a screamer band, we played a lot of crush shows and a lot of punk shows. So we instantly had a way into that scene, despite being a black metal band. So especially our first few tours, we were often the only metal band playing, but it made total sense because of where we came from, which I think has been quite positive politically, because maybe other black metal bands would have struggled to be a part of this anarchist community straight away, maybe. So yeah, and it's 3 people from that old band. And the day the last one broke up, we started this new one pretty much like 2 hours later.
Yeah. So we don't know what else to do anymore. It's kind of been so long playing in bands and touring that I couldn't face the prospect of not having it. So yeah, that same afternoon, we started Dawn Raid.
Yeah, we kind of joke about it sometimes. Like we're not super old, but we're all sort of in or reaching our 30s now, and we've definitely structured a large part of our adult lives so far around being in bands and going on tour. And it kind of feels we've kind of got to the point where we've kind of fucked up with that so much anyway that we may as well just keep going on tour, because everything's just built around it now anyway. So yeah,
that resonates with me so hard. I'm also will turn 33 this year, and there's sort of no like framework for sort of moving forward at this age.
Keep going then, man.
Yeah, just keep on doing what kind of makes sense is my feeling on the latter. But I love the music, and I'm super excited to be talking with y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm also really interested in the intersection of black metal and anarchism. What do you think the two things have to offer each other? You mentioned a few things, but I was wondering if you had any more words on this topic.
I think black metal can be a very extreme type of music. It can also be very reflective, and it's an emotional type of music, definitely. And when the politics that we're talking about are about, destroying the structures that we see around us, and about the emotional response to that, and it makes sense that when we see the extremes of capitalism and the damaging hierarchies that are there. We talk about the challenge of destroying those and the emotions that come with that you want, that black metal provides the right vehicle to talk about those subjects and to talk about those emotions.
Yeah, I don't know if black metal has ever particularly been a very anarchist scene, but I think it's often been quite anti-corporate and in some aspects anti-capitalist. And to me, it just makes perfect sense that the next step for black metal is to be explicitly anti-capitalist and to be anarchist. I think because it is a very reflective genre. It's often focused a lot on nature and that sort of stuff, and those things tie in very well with the politics I think I have and that we have. I think it makes perfect sense.
Do you ever encounter any sort of blowback from folks who want to like talk about the sort of sketchy roots or some of the sketchy roots of black metal, or is that kind of not a topic of conversation where you're at?
It comes up, like inevitably it comes up, and especially people who aren't that familiar with black metal or aren't actively engaging with it. Their only understanding of it is sometimes the quite extreme right elements of it because they've gained a lot of publicity. It's such a minor part of black metal, but it's also a part that you can't ignore because it is so public. We come across it, make it very explicitly clear that we have absolutely no connection or nothing to do with that. And then the other side of that is the aim of Dawn Raid and bands that we tour with and bands that we're friends with is to destroy that scene, is to take that right wing and that sketchy element out of it entirely and make sure that black metal is a genre that is dominated by anarchist and radical left bands, and that there's no space for those right wing bands to play or to build or to organize in.
Yeah, I think one conversation we've had a few times, which hasn't actually been an issue for us yet, is how we deal coming into contact with right wing bands. Obviously, we're never gonna play or have anything to do with explicitly Nazi bands, but this is a scene that's very good at disguising its quite ugly politics sometimes, and people are very good, and bands that we know to be right wing will adamantly claim that they're not. So one thing we've discussed a lot is what we do when we do come into contact with these sorts of bands. Do we just purely play in an anarchist scene where everybody agrees with us and trying to create safe spaces at shows, or do we go out into the wider metal scene and take those ideas with us and try and stamp out the right wing? I think that's something we don't have a final answer yet, and we're quite sort of interested to see what other people think about it as well. And because on the one hand, we don't want to be lending any support or credibility to those politics, but at the same time, I think if we leave them with their own isolated, untouched scene, then they have a safe space for themselves to build their ideas. So I think that's going to be the next step for us maybe in the next few years, is to work out whether we just keep ourselves completely separate from those ideas or if we go into those spaces and try and repoliticize them, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. There's this notion that sort of spaces that exist in a political vacuum will kind of float toward the right. So it makes a lot of sense to fight this thing on many fronts or whatever.
This is Cauldron of Rebirth, off of the 2015 release by Dawn Raid, entitled Thorn, a Blight. This and all their other music can be heard on their Bandcamp free of charge.
You mentioned a little bit about kind of the impetus of playing music was wanting to see the kind of politics in music and sort of wanting to create that. How have you seen black metal, or, you know, metal in general as a genre, play out in the anarchist scene where you're at? And I'm interested in also the political scene where you're at as well.
I think in the UK, like, it's slightly different in sort of mainland Europe, but in the UK, the music scene and the political and activist scene are pretty separate. I think it's fair to say. We've got a very close friend who played in grime bands and bands his whole life, and he's a bit older than us. He's been doing this for a long time, and he was talking about how realistically he's not really managed to bring people from the music scene into activism in decades, and that people either find themselves from the music scene, or the people who are being brought into that are coming at it from different areas. So in the UK, I think it's still very separate. There's the punk and metal scene, and then the political and anarchist and activist groups, and there's not much crossover really, which is really unfortunate. I think in mainland Europe, like in Germany in particular, with such a strong squat scene, and still, it means that the politicized spaces are the spaces where the shows are happening. So it's much easier there to have a link up between the anarchist scene and the music scene, and actually in Eastern Europe, in the Czech Republic and in Poland as well. But yeah, in the UK, for a whole load of different reasons, the two scenes seem to exist quite separately.
Are there any other people who are attempting this like political synthesis or synthesis of politics and music?
There's bands in Liverpool that play different genres of music. We know some sort of like people that are in punk and ska bands that are definitely quite active. But I do also think those genres have always been quite active. I think in more extreme music, I don't know a lot of people that are doing the exact same thing as us. Obviously, I think grind can be quite good. There's definitely a crossover in grindcore and people that are getting involved and people that are anarchist. I think metal maybe seems to keep itself quite separate from political scenes. I think we're probably the most explicitly political metal band I know. I guess we have definitely gone out of our way to be very politicized. I think with metal, metal often is, like we were saying before, quite introspective and personal and a little bit esoteric sometimes, and it does lend itself well to just focusing on apolitical things and personal issues. So I think for that reason there hasn't been many political bands, but I don't know, it works well for us and it feels like the natural thing for us to do and to sing about.
I think interestingly there had to be some fundraising done recently for some anti-fascists in the UK ended up going to prison, and when different groups were sitting down and thinking about how to fundraise, there were some people who decided not to put on the usual punk gigs, and they put on like grime and techno club nights and made so much more money doing that. And they didn't publicly politicize it as much as maybe the traditional like for punk band fundraiser would, but it was a way they needed to make the people who were in prison needed funds really quickly for their defense, and it was super successful. So I think there's lots of different ways, and sometimes if we keep doing the same things, you keep making the same mistakes. But actually looking at bringing politics into metal or into electronic music, I think might be the next stage, or I hope so anyway.
Yeah, I think otherwise you're always looking to the same people for support, for financial support, or you're asking the same pool of people to constantly risk safety and spend their time doing these things. And I think the more of us there are, the safer we all are. So I think it's important we go into different spaces and meet new people and have these conversations in spaces where they're not happening already.
Definitely. I'm kind of delighted at the prospect of a political electronic music scene. That's super interesting. And also to be clear, when I was making that distinction between like punk and metal, I think that I wasn't trying to sort of make a value judgment on one or the other. I think both are extremely important, and as somebody who has been listening to metal for a pretty long time, it's a pretty important part of how I process the world. So I ask that with a lot of love and a lot of respect.
Absolutely.
The best metal is played by punks anyway.
Definitely. No, I agree with that. What are some of your favorite metal projects?
What have I been listening to recently? The new, is it Havakruunu? The new Havakruunu album, a band from Finland. It plays like quite harsh, riffy, triumphant black metal. I'm really, really excited about that album at the moment. I thought the new Power Trip album was very good. What have you been listening to?
Sort of more classic stuff, but always listen to like Ulver, and then a Dutch band called Earthfaust. The new Loss album, I listened to that last week, and it was amazing. Bellwitch.
Yeah. I thought Blood Incantation, I think, at the moment are absolutely just smashing it. I saw them a little while ago, and that was definitely one of the best shows I've been to in a long time. So yeah, a lot of death metal and a lot of the harsher side of black metal, I guess.
Yeah, the new riffy second wave black metal that seems to be having an amazing revival.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also a huge fan of Bellwitch. I think they're super good. So, sort of the reason that we're talking right now is that you're playing in Asheville really soon. Will you talk about this some and how you heard about the venue and how you got sort of booked on the tour and stuff?
So there's a label called Halo of Flies, which we followed for years and years and years. And then we released a record, an EP, a while back on a German label called Moment of Collapse. And we wanted to repress it. And Halo of Flies were kind enough to help out with that. And then we talked to those people a lot. And we said, we really want to come over and tour. What do you think? And Halo of Flies said, there's this band, Dakma. And I was like, yeah, I know them. They're amazing. They want to tour at the same time. So we joined up with them. And we got quite a lot of help from Dakma and from Halo of Flies with booking the shows. And I think those guys have all toured before. They've been in lots of different bands. And yeah, they booked the show in Asheville. And it looks like it's going to be really fun. So it should be good. That's kind of how it came about.
Yeah, we usually book all the shows ourselves. Even when we've toured with other bands, we usually end up booking 90% of the shows. So this is the first tour where actually Fabian booked one show. Is it?
I booked Detroit.
Yeah. So we booked one show on this tour. So it's been kind of out of our hands this time. It's been pretty nice. We just have to turn up, get driven to various towns we've never been to, play shows, meet people. It's been pretty easy, pretty cool, I think.
That's excellent. I always love hearing stories about, when people who have done things kind of DIY all their lives sort of do things in a way that might seem a bit more like, quote, normal or whatever, and being like, holy shit, this is so fucking easy. So do you have any upcoming projects or new releases that you want to talk about, or any sort of political projects that you want to give sort of a signal boost to?
I think music-wise, we've got our first full-length record is coming out in the autumn. It's coming out through Halo of Flies again. I think we can say it's written, it's recorded, it's pretty much ready to go.
Yeah.
So that'll come out later this year. It's the longest record we've ever done, with obviously some of the longest record with Don Raid, but any project we've ever been involved in. It's definitely something we're super, super excited for people to hear. So that's going to come out. I think we're working on something else that's a little bit different as well as Dawn Raid. That's just another side of what we're trying to do. That should come out hopefully before the end of the year as well. But that's like a little small thing. So that's what we're doing music-wise.
Yeah, getting this album out is I guess it always is, but it's definitely quite a lot of work. But we're nearly there with it. We just have to sort the final details. And although nothing is officially announced, we have a record coming out in autumn, which is going to be we're really, really proud of. I think it's a big jump forward for us for a lot of different reasons. It's a lot more political. yeah, I think we're really, really excited about that, actually.
I think politically, next Saturday, actually, unfortunately, we're going to be on tour. But in Liverpool, there's a far-right group that is trying to march in Liverpool. It'll be the third time in 2 years that a far-right group's tried to march in Liverpool. And I don't know if people have seen the YouTube videos of what happens when far-right groups come to Liverpool, but it tends to be a pretty exceptional response from the community here. It's always been like a radical and left-wing city, and always been an anti-fascist and anti-racist city. And I said it's really open to immigration because it's a port city. So we're pretty gutted to miss what's going to happen next Saturday, but I think it's going to be spectacular. And I think it's going to be hopefully one of the strongest anti-fascist responses that there's been in the UK in modern times. So just from seeing how every single lamppost has a poster on it for the anti-fascist call-out, I think it's going to be really amazing.
I think it's going to be huge.
Yeah,
it's going to be good.
And lots of good people doing lots of hard work to make sure that it's a very clear response and a rejection of any attempt to bring fascism to our town. So
yeah, if anybody from Liverpool does listen to this, we're really sorry that we're not going to be there, but a really fun day.
Yeah, enjoy it. But yeah, and definitely look at the YouTube videos from the last couple of times. They were spectacular days.
Some robust discussions, definitely.
Definitely. That's really, really good to hear. So that's all the questions that I have. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to talk about in the interview? Anything else that you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think we were so stoked to be asked to be on this. Like, we've listened to it before quite a lot, and yeah, we were really, really stoked and excited to be asked for this.
Yeah, we're proud of this. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for contacting us.
No, thank you. This has been such a pleasure. In the show, I really want to incorporate sort of more aspects of anarchism and just sort of the facets that it experiences, because it's a human thing. It's going to be as multifaceted as humans are, and I really appreciate y'all making the time to do this and being so responsive and sweet with it. And I'm super looking forward to the show, which is going to be on June 1st at the Auditorium in Asheville, and people should come out. It's going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, sure.
That was our interview with Dawn Raid about black metal, anarchism, and their upcoming show date in Asheville on June 1st at the Auditorium with the band Dogma, with whom they are touring the U.S. Other show dates and locations are as follows: Friday, May 26th in Cincinnati, Saturday, May 27th in Pittsburgh, Sunday, May 28th in New York City, Monday, May 29th in Philadelphia, Tuesday, May 30th in D.C., Wednesday, May 1st in Richmond, Thursday, June 1st in Asheville, Friday, June 2nd in Atlanta, Saturday, June 3rd in New Orleans, Sunday, June 4th in Houston, Monday, June 5th in Dallas, Tuesday, June 6th in Tulsa, Wednesday, June 7th in Columbia, June 8th in the Quad Cities, June 9th in Milwaukee, and finally, Saturday, June 10th in Detroit. You can check out all their music for free on Bandcamp and keep in touch with their doings at Fedbook. You're listening to WSFM LP 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina. This is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us always with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. This show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville, specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop. Again, if you want to keep up with any of the guests that we spoke to or any of the situations that were mentioned, you can first go to supportericking.org. You can write to him and send him things and read his poetry and many more topics you can do at that website. And also, if you're in Asheville, you should come out to the Auditorium on Thursday, June 1st to the Dawn Raid show. It's going to be really fun, and meet all the buddies. To take us out, we are going to have the track 2 on Dawn Raid's most recent album called A Thorn, a Blight. The track is called Cauldron of Rebirth.